afternoon, and welcome to our fourth session this week on the DroneTech Talks. And our topic for today is skills and careers in drone technology. I am Benedicta Durkin, and I head up a unit called the Ease of Doing Business at the Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone. And for today, I will guide our proceedings. I see some numbers are still climbing in terms of people signing on, but we want to kick off on time because we have an exciting program for this afternoon. The DroneTech Innovation Showcase is the first event in a series of events brought to you by the Saldanha Bay Innovation Campus, which is an initiative of the Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone. These events include the DroneTechs that we've had taking place this week, this being our fourth one, an entrepreneur boot camp, and the Game of Drones pitching event, which will all be leading up to our Innovation Day taking place in October. Please follow the Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone on LinkedIn if you don't already. And for more information, do feel free to drop your details in the chat, which is the Q&A function available to you. And someone from our team will add you to a mailing list. And if you have any specific questions, they'll be able to respond as well. For those who joined a bit later on, we did show some housekeeping rules on the screen, but I will just remind everyone to please keep your mics muted for the duration of the session. It's a wonderful short session and we want you to be fully engaged. We encourage you to comment in the chat box throughout the session, but also do request that you send any questions through when we open the Q&A session. So that will come through a bit later on. You can look for that at the bottom of the screen. And the questions in the Q&A chat box we prioritize. So when we open up the Q&A session, please feel free to post your questions in there. That will come after the presentation from our guest speaker this afternoon. And if you wish to voice your question, then please do raise your hands and someone will unmute you and allow for you to ask your question or voice over your comments. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful esteemed presenter for today, Ms. Refilwe Ledwaba, who is a pilot and founder, and she's a pilot, but also a founder and executive director of Girls Fly in Africa program, which is a GFPA foundation. You would have seen her wonderful credentials that were showing up on the screen earlier on, and we are looking very much forward to hearing from her as she talks about skills and careers in drone technology. Take it away, Refilwe.
Thank you for the kind introduction and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the skills and careers in the drone technology industry. So when it comes to the drone industry, entrepreneurs have long recognized the immense potential that drones offer, particularly combined with additional technologies. So we've seen, like in the last 18 months or so during the pandemic, that it has inspired and accelerated the development even more. So looking at the market value, you probably have heard these numbers in the last few days. The market value is between $13.5 billion to about $22.5 billion, and it is estimated to go up 10 times by 2025. We've seen a lot of more industries beginning to benefit from the drone technology, with applications ranging from airport inspection, birth controls, to drone delivery. From medicine delivery to helping kids learn STEM principles that will guide their future careers, we know that drones are here to stay. But that also means more career opportunities, and also more importantly, opportunities for entrepreneurs to also have the piece of the pie. Next slide. They've already, I think, touched a little bit about my background. My name is Refilwe, and I'll be taking you through some of the careers available in the industry. I'm a qualified helicopter pilot, fixed-wing pilot, and I recently qualified as a drone pilot and a trainee drone pilot. And I'm busy with my drone pilot instructors. very, very exciting. And I'm also the founder and executive director of Girls Fly program in Africa. And I'll tell you briefly about what we do. Next. So the foundation is an NPO, is an information and education science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths program for primary, high school, and post-school learners with a focus on aviation and space. We include the use of design thinking, technology, and innovation to shape, empower, enable, and support the generation of makers and problem solvers in the aviation and space industry in Africa. Next. I think as a foundation, we've long realized that many of the industries have become reliant upon tech solution, meaning STEM proficient workers. It has become important for us to introduce STEM at an early age to ensure that students are equipped to meet the world of today and the world of tomorrow. From technology and engineering perspective, drones are an excellent way to introduce students to building, getting hands-on experience in design, manufacturing, and piloting. We also show them real application in industries, and through design thinking workshop, students get to identify some of the challenges in the industry and prototype some of the solution. Next. And through our scholarship, we offer financial support to train drone pilots, drone pilot instructors. We also train engineers, and we focus mainly on aeronautical engineering and software engineering. Next. So although our focus is mainly on STEM, the drone industry is varying and wide, and it also includes non-STEM careers, as we will see in the next few slides. You probably have seen this overview of the drone tech industry. It's not the complete overview, it's just the important parts. We've got companies, we've got organizations, we've got government departments, we've got agencies and higher educations that are involved in the industry. And within those companies, we've got commercial and corporate companies. And within organizations, we've got NPOs that are involved, government departments and agencies, we've got Civil Aviation Authority, and obviously we've got higher education, which are universities that are involved in research and some of the amazing innovations that are coming up in the industry. I just want to look a little bit on the commercial and corporate sector, because that is the sector that is creating opportunities in the drone industry. Within the commercial and corporate sector, we've seen the industry being applied into agriculture, humanitarian, construction, security, education, insurance, media, marketplace, to name a few. And with that, there is a creation, a lot of creation of jobs in those industries. But as well, when a lot of people think about careers in the drone industry, just like in the aviation industry, they immediately think about pilots. Obviously, pilots are the bulk of people that are employed in the industry, but there are also other careers that are there. For example, when we look at the commercial and corporate sector and all those other sectors, you've got engineers that are maintaining the drones that we'll talk about. You've got data analysts that are supposed to, or that are analyzing the data that the pilots get from flying. You've got support staff as well, post holders that are involved in safety, they're involved in quality, you've got finance, you've got commerce. So that's how wide the industry is. And I think it's quite important as well that we mention all the support, the support part of it, the legal, the insurance, the accounting, the consultancy. And then when we look at government agencies, you've got regulators such as the South African Civil Aviation Authority. Yes, they are regulators, but they employ people in the industry as well. You've got a section that deals with the with the drone industry, and in that section they've got inspectors, they've got people that are doing research, people that are involved in ICAO. So there's as well another opportunity. But I think the opportunity, the sector where there is a lot of more opportunity even going forward, and even it's also up to the entrepreneurs and innovators to actually open up that sector, is the manufacturing and supplying sector in South Africa, especially the software and hardware companies. We don't have a lot of those. And within the software companies, you can get employed as well. There's a lot of opportunities there, product development, sales, and software engineers. And within the hardware companies, you're talking about hardware engineers, you're talking about designers, you're talking about sales, you're talking about product development. And I think my last block, which I think it's a very, very important block that is going to unlock a lot of other industries, a lot of other applications. And when we lock other application, it means that we're creating more job opportunities in a whole lot of other sectors, is the entrepreneurship and the innovation part. There is a lot of work that is being done on that part. And as well, I think it's a huge opportunity. And given that the industry as well is expected to grow 10 times more by 2025, so it's only logical that that sector, the entrepreneurs, to also share that piece of the pie and really work on innovating and more in the drone industry. Next. And I just want to touch on some of the traditional carriers that are found there. You've got your pilots, which duties are to operate the drone and return the data. They work in a variety of fields, including mapping, construction, agriculture, and we've already named a few. But for you to become a pilot, you need to be licensed to become a pilot. And there are some of the requirements that you need to meet. Even though a STEM background is ideal, it's not required. So you can still enter the industry without a STEM background. You need to be 18 years of age, medically fit, and you need a certain level of English proficiency. You'll go through training through a flight training school that is approved training organization. And the CAA website, they have got a list of all the approved training organizations in South Africa. And in the next slide, I'll show you how to find that list. So you can go through the list, choose the organization, and you can get the training from there. Pilot instructor is another option as well. You can work at an approved flight training school. You'll provide ground and flight training. And after a few years, you can become what we call a designated remote pilot examiner, where you will go around, you'll be the one that examine people that have done their training to see that they meet the requirements that are set by the Civil Aviation Authority. To be a designated examiner, there is a whole lot of other requirements as well, and that information you can get from the Civil Aviation Authority. Maintenance, you can also be a maintenance engineer, because drones as well need to be maintained. Normally, it is an in-house training, but there is a guidelines that is provided by CAA, how the training should be, and it should be approved by CAA. And I think the last two blocks is the two blocks that we need to actually focus on in terms of the carriers that are available, the data. So most companies do train their pilots to do that, to analyze data, but there's a lot of universities and TVET colleges and other organizations that I'll talk a little bit about later do provide the training for data analytics. And I think that's where we need more skills. And those are the skills that we normally don't really talk about, because when we look at the drone industry, we look at, the pilot are in the sort of the front line, and we tend to emphasize more on the pilots. And for us to really go forward and to really innovate more, the last part in terms of the engineers, we need hardware engineers, we need software engineers, we need, aeronautical engineers, people that can manufacture, people that can program, and combine, like I said in the beginning, other technologies that I'll talk about that are the additional technologies that can support and really enhance the drone technology going forward. Next. And just here, just a quick one where you can get information from the Civil Aviation Authority. You just type www.caa.co.za. You go to information of the industry, and right at the bottom, you click on remotely piloted aircraft system. There is a whole lot of information there. So you'll get information about what would you need to become a pilot? What would you need to become an engineer? And even most importantly, what would you need to actually open as an entrepreneur, as somebody that want to operate in the industry? There's a lot of information there about different types of licenses that you will need to have to be able to operate as an entrepreneur, whether as a, you need to operate as a social entrepreneur where you provide services not for profit, or you're providing services for your own corporate company as a support service, or you're providing services, your company providing those drone services. So this is a very, very good tool as well. It's also a good tool for the public, because what is the other thing that has been happening, there's been a lot of people that will buy these drones, And because of lack of knowledge, they'll be operating them without knowing the correct regulations of how do you actually operate, operate the drones. So this particular website as well will be able to give you information. What are some of the rules and regulations? Where can you fly the drones? And if you're flying recreationally, which are some of the clubs that you need to join to be able to understand and to know that even if you're flying recreationally drones, there are still certain regulations that you need to adhere to. Next. And I think one of the most interesting part is always the emerging technology. And I've spoken a little bit about combining the drone technology with some of the additional technology that are already there. We talk about custom augmented reality apps and drones. Those are some of the future drone software development, existing tech, VR, AR, that, combined with drone technology really does take, take this, the industry even further, even forward. It's been done in a lot of countries, but to be able to do that, I think the last two columns that I spoke about, we need those software engineers, we need programmers, we need coders. So, as much as everybody, when they come into the industry, they immediately go and, and want to become pilot, there's just more things that you can do within the industry rather than becoming a pilot that are as equally important and maybe even more important, because those are the things that will take the industry forward. Next. These are some of the institutions that are involved in the industry, or that you can you can go and study at. You've got Wits University, they offer aeronautical engineering, they've got a data science institute as well. So you can go in there and study aeronautical engineering, mechanical engineering, you can go and study data science. You've got University of Pretoria Enterprise University that have got support programs as well, executive programs that are in the industry, Cape Peninsula University of Technology, Wits Institute of Data Science, we've spoken about it, University of Johannesburg, Nelson Mandela University. And these are just some of the few. There are online, some of them are free online platforms where you can learn coding, where you can learn about some of the software, some of the hardware, and where you can actually get certified as well in data analytics. So you don't necessarily have to go to these institutions or TVET. There is a lot of information online, and you can equip yourself to be able to go and, to come back and really contribute to the industry. Next. And there's other organizations that are involved in skills development programs and that offer bursaries as well. You've got innovation hubs that have got incubators, Mzansi Aerospace, Inspire Africa, they've got skills development programs. Go visit those websites as well, see what they do, how you can skill yourself. We've got TITA as well that recently has given a lot of bursaries to train pilots, to train people to learn a lot about data, how to analyze it. You've got Simulong, which are spaces as well where you can go and experiment in terms of if you want to build, they've got so many support structures there. Those are the places that you can go and play in the drone industry and see how you want to, what you want to innovate and what is it that you want to do. Next. And yeah, so I've kept my introduction a bit short so I can be able to take questions because I think that those are more important. The information that I would have told you, it's out there, it's readily available, but I think let's spend the rest of the time really addressing the questions that are there.
Thank you, Refilwe. I think everyone has learned a lot. It's a lot of information, but I think the key takeaway there is do visit that caa.co.za website to find out more information. I'm going to jump straight onto the Q&A. I have 2 questions thus far. Okay, great. They're coming in. Great. I was going to encourage you to please do type your questions in. So Refilwe, the first one is, are we being ageist here? So the question from anonymous attendee is, we've heard about the opportunities for youth, but what is the process for adults wanting to get trained as a drone pilot?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that I'm in the same category where I'm not youth anymore, and it's a fair question to to actually ask. And I think the reason why obviously opportunities are opening more for youth is the statistics, they speak for themselves, and the high amount of youth unemployment. But having said that as well, there are a lot of other organizations that don't have age specifications in terms of support. For example, I know as well some of the scholarships that we give out don't have any particular age specifications, and some of the incubation opportunities as well, they don't have age specification. But I mean, you are correct in a sense that it does exclude it can exclude some of these programs, can exclude a lot of people that perhaps could have added with other experiences more value to the industry. But I would say, do more research. There are more opportunities. And I always say something else as well. When I always look at the requirements and there's an age, I'll put something and I put a supporting document, a supporting document. Even though there's the age bracket, maybe somebody might see that, the value that you can add, you might be able to actually even add value into that particular program to the young people that are coming. So I think that's the only thing that I can say there in terms of age.
Thank you. That's great advice. So fear not, age is not the limitation here. I have the next question from Munib. And this has to do with the regulations in South Africa. So the question is, it's a multiple kind of a question here. When will South African regulations change? So that's the first question. Because the context is that currently the compliance is way too expensive in South Africa. And most people are excluded from using drones legally for work. So in his example, where he works in waste management for the Western Cape government, he cannot do a simple inspections, although he does have an RPL, and only big business can use the drones. I think you have definitely got more experience with regards to regulations to comment on that.
Yeah, it's actually a very good question. So I did spend 3 years sitting at the Air Service Licensing Council as the vice chairperson, and those are some of the big challenges that the industry has been facing. And he's right. I mean, we talk about innovation and we talk about wanting to get the industry forward, but the truth of the matter is innovation and regulation are going at opposite opposite direction. You've got innovation that is, we're innovating at a very fast rate, and the regulations are not keeping up with that innovation. And even when I was sitting at that council, we knew about that the act and the regulation doesn't really allow what we actually trying to do in terms of promoting promoting entrepreneurship, promoting innovation. And the question of when will the regulation change? Very interesting question. The answer is, I have no idea. But what I can say is there is a lot of talk, there's a lot of what do you call it, in Zulu, imbizos or whatever that they put together to actually discuss that particular challenge, because it is a big challenge. Drones have got the potential to unlock a lot of industries, not only in the waste management, but in the rural areas. It needs to be a commodity where a person can have a drone in hand and be able to create some sort of an income. And at the moment, you're right, the regulations are not allowing for that particular innovation. But there's a lot of, I know there's a lot of research that has been done. There's a lot of publications that are coming. There's a lot of lobbying by different organizations to make sure that these regulations are relaxed, but bearing in mind as well the unintended consequences as well, because I think one of the biggest reasons why these regulations are tight is because of the recreational use, or the public not knowing how to use the technology in a safe manner. So it's a two-way, it's sort of a two-way thing. There needs to be a lot of education in terms of the use of the technology, but at the same time as well, the regulators or the people that are responsible for that, they need to be, that drone ecosystem, they need to start talking to one another and saying, how do we create an environment where we can allow this innovation, this entrepreneurship, but at the same time, making sure that it is safe, for the public, it's safe for everybody else. So yeah, it's something that I hope that will happen as well personally, because I think there's a lot of potential in the industry.
Thank you for that. And just a short one from Alex. What is the fastest growing career in the drone industry? Give us the quick cheat.
Yeah, no, I think probably the fastest growing, just from anecdotal evidence, it's probably the piloting. But I would say the most important one that I think we need to start focusing on is that part of manufacturing, and in the manufacturing space, both in the software and in the hardware, because I think that particular one is going to unlock a lot of innovation, a lot of employment opportunities. And in South Africa, there's not a lot of activity, or, on that side. But in terms of the operations, I think I would say, from just anecdotal, probably the pilots are, because they're out there and because they're visible, that's what everyone sees, that's what everyone wants to do.
Thank you for that. There actually is another question that probably will be answered with the same answer, but I'll get to it. I'm going to combine the next two questions. The first is, how did you get into the drone industry from piloting? And second being, what exactly inspired you? So I think you could probably answer the two together.
So a few things. I've been in the aviation industry for 20 years, so I pretty much fly, in every sector. I fly helicopters, I fly fixed wing drone industry. But what interested me about the drone industry is the work with my foundations. So we initially started using the drones to teach STEM principles, and I started doing a lot of more research about drones. And I was like, wow, this is a very interesting, and it's an industry for the future, unmanned. So just looking at the UAV unmanned aerial vehicle industry and looking at some of the interesting innovation that are coming up in terms of flying cars, and that is the future. As a pilot, I've flown for airlines as well, where at some point, the aircraft is flying itself, it's on autopilot. And you're looking at a future where at some point we're looking at where all those airlines will be, controlled remotely. So for me, it is the future. It is inspiring, but most importantly, I think it can solve so many of the socioeconomic challenges that we're currently facing in Africa. We're talking about transportation, we're talking about delivery, and that's where my other passion is, through my foundation. So for me, that's what inspired me, and I decided to get my drone license as well. So I do a little bit of teaching the young kids that I come across, and with my instruction as well, I can even add more value. Something that I haven't added, I do lecture at university as well, and regulatory environment, and I lecture introduction to drone technology. So it's just, and probably my PhD research will focus on the innovation in that particular sector, because I think it's the future. And I think the most interesting and exciting part about this industry, it cuts across all the other industries, every other industry. So in 2 years, drones will be in every industry that we know of, and they will have work in those industries. So I think it makes logical sense for me to be where the innovation and the technology is going.
Thank you. And I think you actually answered the next question as well, which was, what do you think that the drone industry in SA will look like in 10 years' time? I think you have been mentioning around manufacturing being the area to go, and that it really has broader application. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, or I could move to the next question.
Yeah, just one comment. I think if we can solve the issue of regulations and the balance between that and maintaining the safety, I just see the industry really booming and creating a whole lot of more jobs for the youth and old people. Let me not.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. This question, maybe you did answer with the earlier one on the RPL, but I will still read it out just in case there's anything else to add. So it's from Rian saying, current drone RPL requirements are currently so prohibitive that it puts a lot of people off from pursuing it as a career. Getting an RPL costs money, and then you still can't operate commercially as a drone pilot unless you work under an ROC or have your own ROC. Drone as careers can open up a lot of opportunities and address some of our employment challenges, especially for youth, but the requirements are too prohibitive. I know you touched on that earlier with regards to the RPL, I think the regulation, but I don't know if you can just also touch, I think, on the ROC as well in this particular answer.
Yeah. And I'm gonna again agree with Rian in terms of the industry. Yes, there's a lot of opportunities, but at the moment they're hamstrung by the regulations that are still in existence. But what I want to add, I come from the manned industry, so when I look at the requirements for remote pilot license, it doesn't look as inhibiting or as prohibitive as the manned industry or as expensive, but it's because of the, of the industry that I come from. And I've seen a lot of opportunities to be trained, especially in the last few months, to be trained as a drone pilot. So yes, maybe in a bigger context, it is expensive, but in the context of the aviation industry, we look at it as a much cheaper option actually to enter the aviation industry. The second thing that you spoke about as well is, yes, when you get that license, you have to work under an ROC, and you can't work on your own. And I think, again, we've addressed that if that had to happen, what would it look like in terms of the regulation, but more as well as importantly, what it would look like in terms of safety, still maintaining safety. And so you can imagine what the worry of the regulators are, having thousands of drones or people having these drones, but we actually don't have the regulation to support or even enforcement to do that. But you are right, it's still prohibitive. In terms of an ROC, obviously there's 3 different kinds of ROCs, and I'll go quickly through them. You've got the non-profit ROC license, which you don't need to go through the Air Service Licensing Council, and this will be for organizations that are involved, obviously, in giving those services, but for non-profit purposes. And then you've got obviously your commercial, which is a whole lot of companies are there. And if you want a list, you can go through to the website. But I know from sitting on the licensing council, it's quite a tedious process because you have to go through the Air Service Licensing Council. But I can also say as well that a lot of the people that are responsible for those rules, they know that it is a tedious process, and there are from what I know before I left, that there are mechanisms that are being implemented to start looking at it, or to start making it easier. And I agree with you. You cannot be applying for a drone license the same way as you're applying for a commercial airline license, because the requirements are almost the same. And for me, it doesn't really, like you, it doesn't make sense. So the best thing to do would be to actually, separate the two, where you've got a different requirements and applications for that, and then just separate, and that requires a lot of, changing the act. And I remember there was an Imbizo or just a drone ecosystem or some facilitation that had happened. And those are some of the challenges that were brought forward, that were incorporated in some of the new regulations that might be coming up, but I'm not quite sure what that is going to sort of look like. And then the last one, obviously, is the corporate ROC. And the corporate ROC, you don't need to get an Air Service Licensing Council, is when your company uses a drone as well to support whatever they're already doing. So I know that is maybe that is not really, sort of a tedious process. But you're right, we need to find a way to be able to allow individual users to enter and operate and be able to make money without this tedious process. And I think that's where we are. What needs to happen? What needs to change? How do we balance having those particular group of people, but still making sure that the safety aspect, because I think everybody's worried about how do we then make sure safety aspect and enforcement aspect are in place to make sure that we've got an industry that is, safe, harmonized, and we don't get a lot of incidents that are, currently happening where drones are colliding with, parts of aeroplanes or building or anything like that. So we need to be cognizant of that as well when we talk about regulation, and, we need to look at the other side as well.
All right. Thank you for that comprehensive answer. I know we've gone over time. If you'll give me just 3 to 5 more minutes, I've got one more comment and one last question, and then we'll wrap up. So this is a comment, but I will still read it out from Yane, which says, we deal primarily with high-risk industries or areas. The DroneTech is such a useful tool to recognize any impacts which potentially occurred. And I think that really stems what you were talking about with regards to safety. And then I'm going to move on to Carl. Carl has, I'll read the context, and then there's a question that follows. So we place so much emphasis on all the technical skills, and rightly so, because of the nature of this field. In South Africa, we also have a lack of soft skill development in our youth. An individual that lacks in soft skills, such as communication, emotional resilience, leadership, teamwork, and many others may be less successful in gaining the technical skills because they can act as a barrier. People involved in this industry can be so much more successful if they are fully rounded individuals. And the question being, do you think that we should give attention to these soft skills prior to attempting the technical skills when we train future participants in this field? I think that sits squarely in your organization. If you want to respond to that.
Oh no, and he's absolutely right. Soft skills are as important because you're not operating in silo, you're operating in a system that you have to interact with people, you have to interact in teams, communication skills, EQ, how do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with, certain things? Because you're not operating in silo. And I think, from the foundation's perspective, even though I didn't mention it, because we're looking mostly, I was focusing mostly on the drone and the STEM skills, we do that. We have skills development programs that, focuses precisely on those soft skills. And you touch on something quite important as well, which is leadership. And we don't often talk about leadership because the success of this industry as well, it squares a lot on leadership, whether it's, the will to change certain things, on leadership. The companies that are coming up, entrepreneurs that are coming up, they need to be able to have those leadership skills to be able to drive this industry forward. So you are right. All these, some of the interventions that are in place, I know some of them are really technically focused, but we do need to put a lot of emphasis on the soft skill, because like you said, you can be as smart as Einstein, but if you don't know how to communicate or how to use that knowledge or communicate that knowledge to people or apply that knowledge, then that knowledge is a waste. And normally it lies squarely with how you interact, your soft skills, how you as a person, and those skills that you have acquired, that you can acquire. So yeah, we're doing that in the foundation as well.
Okay, great. So I have return questions from people who've asked questions before. Just being conscious of the time, I'm going to ask you, but Refilwe, we are going to need to wrap up soon. But let me honor that. So Munib's asking why we are not using models like the USA, and his background being that in the USA only a web-based exam is necessary. The LAANC system is used to receive authorization. No ROC is necessary. And he says, as far as he knows, still nobody has died. So how did South Africa get here in terms of, I guess that's a complexity of our model. And then a follow-up is that perhaps a risk-based approach should be used. A roof inspector cannot be expected to have the finance to operate under an ROC. If you want to briefly comment on that. I know you've touched the question as well.
Yeah, I think as well, it's important to know that, number one, the industry is still young, which means a lot of countries, I mean, when we look at South Africa, South Africa is actually doing a lot better than a lot of other countries in terms of the regulations. And I think one of the frustration is, yes, things are constantly changing. The people that are, the ones that are, coming up with those regulations, I think they're cognizant as well to the fact that there need to be a lot of changes. So because it's a very young industry and there's a lot of learning that is taking place, and we're taking, those people are taking some of the good practices from a whole lot of other countries, it's going to evolve to a point where we will find that sweet spot. The manned aviation industry, it took years, and even to actually get to where it is. And a lot of mistakes had happened, a lot of incidents happened as well, and to get to where we are. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to talk about a lot of context as well. Context matters. When you look at where South Africa is as a country, and where the kind of and the people that are here, and when you look at the US, it's sometimes we can say it's easy to just take a model from one country and put it in another country without really understanding the context or the kind of infrastructure that we have. They might say, yes, we can only do web-based, we can only do certain things, but they might have monitoring system or the technology that perhaps that we don't have yet. That's number one. Number two, in terms of people understanding the industry, the information that's out there within the public, Maybe in the US, it's quite different. In South Africa, it's only a few people that know about the industry. Just a few days ago, my neighbor was just flying the drone into my house. So it's because of the knowledge and because of maybe where as a country where we are and the understanding of the technology, maybe we're not there yet where we can start implementing some of the modules that are used in those countries because of the unintended consequences as well. When you implement those modules, they need to be support systems that support those modules. Do we have those support systems? So we need to build those support systems. We need to educate the people about the industry, and then we can perhaps start emulating. But I think just in short, when we do that, let's look at the context and see whether if it works there, it might not necessarily work here because of where we are and the systems that we have. I don't know if that's a good enough answer.
Yeah, I think that sounds good for Monique. Hopefully that answers you. I seem to be getting more questions, even though I had thought we were running out of questions. And I mean, what's going to happen is people are going to start dropping out. So I'm going to combine the next two questions. They're not exactly the same, but one was about how is privacy protected in the rise of drone usage? And the other one is, how do you verify the images captured by a drone? They're slightly different, but I thought maybe you're able to wrap them together.
Yeah. It is quite interesting because I was in another seminar and we had a huge discussion about the issue of privacy. But if you let's look at where are we in South Africa in terms of privacy, just in general, before we can even come to drones. The POPI Act was just now recently, came into play, and there's still a lot of teething and a lot of issues even with the act. So one of the things that we tend to talk about when we talk about the industry, we talk about all these other things, and you're rightfully so. We forget about the data and privacy, because you can take that drone up, whether you're working, and you can accidentally take some of the footage or whatever that you're not supposed to, or you don't have permission to take. Then what? So, and the question is, within the POPI Act as well, POPI Act, the drone system, is it accommodated in the POPI Act? So those are some of the interesting questions that, for us to be able to deal with the issue of privacy, we need to deal with the issue of the act itself in the country. And I think earlier on I said, in South Africa, the industry is still so young. There's still a lot of challenges and a lot of things, that need to be looked at. And I think privacy is one of the major things that need to be looked at. And verifying the images as well, something that you're just bringing up, is something that also sort of need to be looked at in the sector. And it goes back to the previous questions as well as to why we don't apply certain modules in South Africa, because all these support regulations that are supposed to be in place, some of them are not in place, some of them we're still implementing, some of them we're still learning as we go as well.
Okay, thanks, Refilwe. So I have a question about reporting bad conduct of a company. I'm just going to say that I'll get the team to respond to you directly on that, Rian, for the sake of time, but also then you can have a direct information on what happens in that case. And I think this is a lovely comment to end off our Q&A session from Carl, which is that at the Genesis Hub Drone Academy, there are 21 youths that are achieving great things at the moment. As we watch this webinar, there are some flying right now at mining sites and power stations, and they are doing great. I think that's a lovely way to end. And
it is absolutely
on
awesome.
that note, yes, on that note, we have run over, but I do just want to thank you all for your participation, joining the webinar. Thank you very much, Refilwe. That was incredibly insightful. On your screen, you'll see there's popped up a poll. Just one question, a yes or no with regards to how you found the session. If you could please respond to that, that will help us to improve how we do these sessions going forward. And a mini advert is that our very own Nogwanda and Palesha will be on the fireside chat at 5:30 this afternoon. And if you want to register for that fireside chat, you can have a look at our LinkedIn page. or email us at the Innovation Campus teams. You'll see that the details, if you can screen that, that we have there you go, we've got the information details, and we've also got the contact details for Refilwe. On that, I would like to thank you very much, Refilwe, for taking the time, and I would like to invite everyone on the webinar to join us for our last webinar of the week. It's been a very exciting week, and I'm sure it's been great learning. Where Refilwe will actually be interviewing a graduate, someone who's recently graduated as a drone pilot on licensing and accreditation. So it would almost be an extension of today. So I invite you to please sign up and join us for that tomorrow. Have a wonderful afternoon further and take good care. Thank you.